I would like to say that it's an honor to present to you today. This theoretical work began with my professor, Darren Jurgen, in Los Angeles, and then I got to develop this as my master's thesis under Professor Jesus Fuerte de Soto and Professor Philip Baggis. Economics is existential. I think what brings us here is not our interest for mathematics and calculus per se, but the philosophical implications of what economics means, and specifically for human life, human civilization. And I think the test of a good doctor would be his ability to treat a patient in front of him. Not so much his knowledge about theories and medicinal remedies and where they come from per se. And I think the same thing can apply for economists. In my opinion, the test of a good economist is his ability to deal with the economy in the modern age, not so much his knowledge in different types of theories. And furthermore, I think that the topic of suicide is most appropriately approached from a praxeological framework. I wouldn't want to leave this topic to any other departments in a university system, not a sociological department or even a psychological department. From what I have gathered, one thinker and many others, Johann Hari, has described suicide as having more or less 9 main causes, and only 2 of them are psychological. The other 7 are social. So suicide, in essence, is determined by sociological effects, and I think suicide is a choice among others for human action. So in a sense, I think it should be approached praxeologically. Furthermore, between the ages of 10 and 36, the second leading cause of death is suicide behind accidents, which means for those ages, the second most dangerous thing to your life is yourself. And in my work, I basically go through the institutions in society, and particularly the institutions under statism. And I try to explain how the existence of the state causes more suicides than what otherwise would be in a free society. So I begin with the first primary institution of monetary manipulation. And I like Jeff Deist's term, political money. Fiat money is a product of socialism. It's a product of the state. We don't have a free market money today that's been discovered through market processes. And the implications that has on society, as we know from each intervention from the government on society, creates distortions. And obviously, people who don't know economic theory think that what is needed to correct these distortions is further interventions in the economy. They haven't read much of Murray Rothbard and Mises. And what that produces, of course, is the boom-bust cycles that we see. And one work that has been very influential in my research was Emil Durkheim's book on suicide. And he looks at economic crises, and he discusses how, yes, during times of economic cycles, there are more suicides that occurs because it's very unbalancing to society. It disrupts market forces. Furthermore, my professor, he's Armenian, he comes from Lebanon. He told me how in the late 80s, early 90s, the currency fluctuation rate was 3 to 1, and then overnight it went to 1,500 to 1. And then just recently, a couple years ago, it went to, I think it was like anywhere from 65 to 80,000 to 1. So there was mass bankruptcies, and there was starvation. There was suicides. People lost everything. I mean, this is what happens. And so, furthermore, many economists are quick to say, wow, we have an increase in productivity post-industrial revolution, and if you look, this has led to an increase in lifespans, as well as there's a decrease in child mortality rates. But that's not the whole picture. There's a component under capitalism that's imperfect, and it's stressful. It's competition. It's profits and losses. We come from hunters and gatherers, so our problems of life were much more external, much more physical. In this world where we are very content, more or less, our problems are more spiritual in a sense. Right now we have enough ability to replace practically every part of the human body. The one part we can't replace is the mind. So the mind is really, as Mises says, it's the foundation. Ideas are the foundation for all human action. And it's ideas that lead people to pursue certain means and certain ends. And maybe I'll come back to money, but another institution I look at is the militarization of society, and that goes hand in hand with public education. And this book is Citizens, Soldiers, and National Armies by Thomas Hitler. David, have you read this book? By Hitler? Thomas Hitler?
No.
It's okay. I haven't read it either. But in this work, it very much talks about the history of France in the 18th century and their means about creating civic citizens. And it's essentially the idea of, we want people to self-regulate themselves so the state doesn't have to. And this then goes into the Prussian system. And the Prussian model, of course, was their system that eventually became the geographical and cultural precursors to the Nazis. But Horace Mann took that system, brought it, and this is what the American public education system is today. It's a factory model of putting children into day prisons where they have to be up at the same hour on the same page of the same book in an assembly line on the bell, preparing them for industrial life. And furthermore, schools are some of the only places children ever experience violence in their life. There's bowling that goes on. A lot of kids, don't enjoy school, to put it mildly. And as far as the military goes, the militarization of society, it's like a hyper-socialization. You're in your troops. Everything is dictated to you. I've talked to former veterans, and they say they literally brainwash you. You have to be submissive going into the military because they have to break you and reshape you to be a good soldier willing to give up your life. And when a lot of troops come back from war, it's not even the ones with PTSD that end up taking their own life. It's actually some of them who have been hyper-socialized coming back into a society that is can be isolating, that they don't know how to adjust themselves. And there's been a lot of suicide by former military members because of this. And so I think that this is an institution that is not natural in equilibrium with freedom and liberty. We wouldn't have these types of militarism. And war, of course, it's not conducive to peace. It's not conducive to health. It's murder in itself. And then I'm hoping to make this my PhD dissertation, but I want to look into prisons as well. Prisons, this gets into the morality of suicide. A lot of people are quick to say, you shouldn't commit suicide. Not too many people are asking, why is it that people are committing suicide? People are committing suicide because clearly they're trying to, well, maybe not clearly, but, if in the praxeological sense, people are trying to go from a lesser satisfactory state of affairs to a more satisfactory state of affairs. If I think what's going to bring me more satisfaction is removing my own life, then perhaps I'll pursue that. And if you take the example of prisoners in the most extreme form, prisoners in a concentration camp, I can't blame them for grabbing a fence and ending their own life. They're victims in the truest sense. They've had their life taken from them and they've become slaves. And I think because it's very Orwellian what we live in, I don't know if this is the land of the free, because we do have the biggest government in world history. We have the biggest prison population in world history. It's Orwellian. They tell you if you drop out of school, that's like the top 1% billionaires are dropouts. So that wording itself, it's like, no, they dropped out of this corporatized system, but they dropped into maybe a better life for themselves. And I think an alteration in perspective can be very useful. The great French philosopher Albert Camus said, there is only one true philosophical question, and it's the question of suicide. And he also said, you should do with your life whatever keeps you from committing suicide. And I'm from California. Like, I go to LA, I see these people. I'm telling you, in the future, there will be some of the greatest economists with blue hair. They're not your enemies. They're just lost. There's this concept of kazushi in martial arts. And kazushi is this idea of off-balancing. When you off-balance someone, you make them more easily to manipulate. They're more vulnerable for you to take a more advantageous position. In the world of statism, the state uses a psychological kazushi. They off-balance you with fear. They say that because of perpetual wars, why is it that people carry guns today? Guns are dangerous. They're a liability. It's not to hunt. It's to protect you from the state. So in essence, we're preparing for a war. This is a Cold War and being perpetuated with the existence of the state. I don't think you're really free until the state goes away in society. The state has gone from the war on terror to the war on drugs, and now the war on germs. And this is an unwinnable existential war. And I think another institution that I observed in my research was the COVID crisis. The imposed isolationism of lockdowns. Human beings are social creatures. Even if we don't think we are. Society is just you and me. It's just you and another person. And I think to that point, the deaths of despair have gone up. But to that point, if you really want to make an impact and help people, I think you most certainly have to help yourself by changing yourself. And my point about Los Angeles is that these people, they are lost. The students in the universities, they don't have ideas. Ask yourself, where would you be and what would you be doing if you didn't know Mises and Rothbard? I don't think you would be much better off than a lot of these people. And to that point, I think remember who the true enemy is. If you're a libertarian, you probably think that it's okay for people to do with their body whatever they want to do. If they want to be trans, great. That's fine. I don't care. But don't forget, especially to my conservative friends out there, trans people are not your enemies. Don't be transphobic. The state is your enemy. And these are the university professors pushing critical race Marxism. Some of the students, some of them are more nefarious than others, but they're not the ones who you should be concerned with. I think it's a distraction. I think you should stay focused on the true enemy to life and liberty. And of course, that's the state. I would like to conclude by saying that I do believe that ideas in this institution are the light that the world needs, because it's been the light that I've needed. Thank you very much.